meet you. First of all, thank you for organizing this nice conference, and especially make a biotech and health tech section for this nice COMEUP 2019. And I am Jung, the director of IMM Investment, and we are going to talk about medtech and health tech future and today's and futures of medtech and health tech. And I like the convergence of deep technology and medicine, so maybe that's the reason I choose for the moderator of this panel talk. And we only have 25 minutes. I think it's very short time, but if, it depends on our discussion. I think it's enough to make a good discussion about it. So would you please introduce a brief self-introduction of yourself and what you do and what your tech is? Oh, yes,
you want me to
please.
go first? Hi, my name is Nayoung Louie from Johns Hopkins University. I teach entrepreneurship, especially medical devices and pharma at Hopkins. I left Korea 20 plus years ago. It's really great to be back at this kind of event about tech startup. So I've been involved in many tech startups, including medical imaging, and my current role is to help Hopkins faculty to start a company. So last 10 years, I've helped many Hopkins students, doctors, faculty members to start a company. So that's what I've been doing. And as of last month, actually, I joined a startup in Korea that's commercializing technologies from Hopkins. So I'm just really excited to hear about the biotech development and startup development in Korea. And just, yeah, really happy to be back.
Hi, I'm Hyun, founder and CEO of Speclipse. And prior to starting Speclipse, I worked for the Boston Consulting Group right after my PhD. And then I worked for one of the national labs in South Korea. And in Speclipse, we developed a real-time, non-invasive, in vivo skin cancer diagnostics based on laser spectroscopy and machine learning algorithm. So our diagnostic accuracy is easily over 95% compared to that of biopsy. And we just acquired the regulatory approval in Europe and Australia so that we can launch our product pretty soon. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I was told to speak in English, but it seems like the absolutely major audience are Koreans. I feel completely out of place, but I'm just going to do it. So my name is YongKeun Park, the faculty in KAIST and co-founder and CTO of Tomocube. So I was trained in medical physics and in the US, and after spending my few days for my grad study, and I came back to Korea and assumed the faculty position. And after working as a professor and developing some imaging device based on holography, we came up with one idea to commercialize the holography-based 3D microscope. So thanks to the support from the accelerators and also KAIST, we formed a team called the Tomocube. And the Tomocube is trying to visualize the three-dimensional shape of the cells and tissues without any preparation. And in collaboration with the AI, we are trying to look at the shape of the cells and tissues to diagnose a specific disease, which cannot be, or which is difficult to be diagnosed with conventional method. Okay.
Thank you. So, Professor Park, you make medical devices like to microscope to observe cell inter-organs without any prior preparations. Is it right? Yes, and now you are trying to find some new diagnostic marker by using AI. And what's the most difficult part to apply your technology to medical diagnosis?
Okay, so from the point of view of the researchers and the technology-based the entrepreneur, so I think, including myself, so many people are so much oversaturated about technology. Like, for example, we have this kind of the new technology, or we have innovative methods which can provide like the more precise result or the more fast result, something like that. But in the end, the problem is, so what? In terms of the application in medical diagnosis, because there are so many techniques already available. The question is how we can bring impact to the patient and hospital. Like for example, how we can save money to hospitals, or how we can increase or decrease turnover time to each clinician, so that it can bring real and impactful the values to health science. So there are a huge gap between the technical development and also bringing impact in clinical science. So we also have the difficulty, experience and difficulty in order to narrow the gap. But that is one of the most critical parts that we have experienced. So having said that, the development of the system and also going through the regulatory, mandatory process. But the real question you have to have, and also I need to have, is what value we can bring to the hospital and doctors. So that's the most critical part that we are experiencing.
Yeah, and Mr. Pyun, you also apply your new technology to distinguish skin mold to skin cancer, and I know that you already make approval for medical devices and also already make sales.
Yes.
Yeah, your technology is also very difficult, very advanced technology, and you applied it to the medical devices. I think you have
Yes.
another very difficult part. So would you please share your experience to us?
So my answer to this question won't be very short because I really had a hard time with this. So our device is pretty unique and world first device based on laser-induced plasma spectroscopy for the skin cancer detection. So there was no predicate device. So we had to run several clinical trials in the United States and also in Australia to get the approval. So one of the hardest thing was to manage clinics overseas. So when I personally met the doctors in the clinics, they promised me to just recruit the patients as fast as possible. But when I'm back in Korea, they just forget about the study, and the recruitment pace is really slow. So in the first clinical sites, I had to hire 3 different nurses by myself so that I could manage to finish the study. And another thing is from sales perspective. So our customers are doctors, and doctors are very highly educated, and they're often pretty picky, right? And so they are not easy to persuade. And so I think the clinical value and also the financial benefit for doctors are the major 2 key parameters you need to pursue when you're doing the medical device business. So for example, our device has 2 different purposes. First one is to detect skin cancer in its early stage, and the other one is to reduce the unnecessary biopsies. But we never tell doctors to reduce the number of biopsies they're doing because they're making money out of doing biopsies. So, and conventionally, so if doctors send out like 5 different biopsies and 2 or 3 come back as benign, and they also miss skin cancer not doing biopsies, so we tell doctors to visually scan the skin lesions and narrow down to a few and apply our device to make a quick final confirmation so that we can make sure that 5 out of them actually come back as skin cancer. So they have more skin cancers to treat, and they can generate more revenue out of treating those cancers. And of course, they can generate revenue for skin cancer detection using our device. For example, one Italian doctor purchased our product, and his regular consultation cost 150 euros, and he additionally charges like 100 euros for skin lesions screening with our device. So like constructing those kind of rationale in a very sophisticated way is very important and is one of the hardest part. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that doctors are very picky and very. Also, I'm a doctor. I know doctor is quite a nerd person, so yeah, it's very difficult to explain your technique to doctors. Yeah, it's very difficult part. And Professor Louie, I heard that you studied MR image analysis as biomedical engineering. Studied at Johns Hopkins University, and now you are doing a tech transfer. You teaching tech transfer in business school. So, how can you make your career change, and what do you do at Johns Hopkins University? So.
Yeah, so I'm a special case. My life kind of goes with Hopkins history. I think many of you are familiar with Johns Hopkins for our medical research. We use a lot of money for research and providing the best treatment for patients. We're really good at that, but we're not necessarily the best at commercialization and startups. So when I was at Hopkins as an undergrad, my advisor had a company, but everybody did it outside. It was kind of looked down, and nobody really knew what startup was. But last 10 years, we've just really made a progress where every faculty, student, a lot of doctors, medical residents, everybody has an idea, and they really want to make an impact. So what we develop in the lab, they want to find a use in the market. So that's what I teach and what I coach. Smart doctors, not to rag on medical doctors, but also on scientists. I was a scientist. We're not good at explaining concepts. We're very smart, so we think everybody else knows what we're talking about. I mean, we're selling a very complicated algorithms and medical devices, but when we interact with investors and industry people, we really have to communicate and just really speak about the market and problem and things like that. So that's what I coach or consult. I usually go in at a startup where the founders are usually professors and scientists or medical doctors who are not necessarily the best at business. And I coach on how to pitch their ideas, how to fundraise, also talking to, we call them strategic, the big medical device companies and imaging companies, they have their own language, that's not science. So I teach them how to communicate with people outside of Hopkins. So we really made a progress. Yeah, so that's what I do for my job.
I think if someone like Dr. Lee have been in Korea, then maybe Pyun and Professor Park much easier to start your startups, isn't it? Okay. So and I think that there is a different ecosystems on Johns Hopkins University because your startup ecosystem is like starting just 5 years old. I heard that. So. Did you explain the difference between Boston's and San Francisco to Johns Hopkins University ecosystem?
Yeah, so again, I don't want to burst your bubbles, right? Hopkins is pretty great, but unfortunately, we're located in Washington, D.C. So all the investors and experienced professionals, they are in Silicon Valley, California, Boston, even in New York. Like when I started when I got interested in startups, I had to actually go to New York to meet investors and people who are interested in startups. So it's very new, so there's definitely lack of access to VCs. So again, I'm just very pleasantly surprised that Korea has this very lively investment ecosystem, biotech, and unfortunately, yeah, DC area, it's beginning, but we don't really have an access to money and professionals.
Maybe the ecosystem seems very different in US by regions, like we are very familiar with Boston or San Francisco, but Washington DC, there are not enough venture capital or accelerators. So it's like, I think that's a very early stage of our Korean startup ecosystem. So, but I'm going to ask to Mr. Pyun that you had a Series A funding 3 years ago, and then recently a large company acquired your firm. And I think it's very different way of our routine, like usual Korean startups. So why did you choose your decisions?
Yeah, so when I first founded Speclipse, our first commercial product was kind of add-on model, which can be attached to commercial medical lasers. So I thought there will be high chance of M&A from like large medical device companies or large medical laser companies. Yeah. So that's why I filed like 50 different patents and building a strong IP portfolio. And so I've always wanted to capitalize some of our value at some point. So IPO can be a nice exit strategy for investors, but cannot be for the entrepreneurs in some point of view. So basically, I preferred a M&A to IPO, but it was not like 100% acquisition. So I have a way still to go, and and of course there will be a synergistic effect between Speclipse and the acquisition partner. So we're going to focus on the marketing to doctors, like starting with key opinion leaders in the conferences in the conventional way. But aside from that, like 2 out of 3 Australians and 1 out of 5 Americans are diagnosed with skin cancer in their lifetime. So they are very motivated to get very accurate skin cancer diagnostics, and they're willing to pay a decent amount of money for that. So we're planning to like do marketing to public, the potential skin cancer patients, using like online marketing in SNS or using media. So that's what our acquisition partner is very specialized in. All right.
Then, Professor Park, we are talking about the future of Meditec and health tech. So, and you are also the professor at KAIST. So, would you? What kind of technology will disrupt the medical diagnosis? Because I think there are many new advanced technology can applied on diagnosis or detections or and so on. So, what did you anticipate for the future?
Okay, so I think that is one of the most difficult questions. I don't have any answer to that because from the point of view of my company, Tomocube, so we have planned to utilize the 3-dimensional shape of the cell, which is called the phenotype. We'll try to make that as a new parameter for diagnosis along with the conventional molecular and genetic information for the diagnosis. But if you ask what will be the future in health tech and biotechnology, I don't have any good answer because everyone else sitting here can understand the commercialization and startup is much easier said than being done. It's not because there are so many technologies available in the market or the scientific community. Furthermore, we also understand that this ecosystem or technology is kind of evolving as time goes on. So in retrospect, so we are in like the 2019, but if you look at what was happening in 10 years ago in 2009, I think many of you couldn't understand and couldn't expect what we are talking about nowadays, like CAR-T and immunoglobulin, etc. So I think it's still, we apply the same to our case in current in the future. So we can expect what will happen in 5 to 10 years. But that's why we have to have the flexibility and the diversity so that when a new chance and opportunity comes, we could have the readily adapt and to make the company and the market. I think that's the way to go. So I think that's my answer to the question.
How about your thoughts and futures of medical diagnosis, Pyun?
So I'm a specialist on laser spectroscopy, but I don't know much about the other technologies. But for the medical, diagnostic device, I think AI has like high impacts on that. And so, for example, our device is a combination of a laser-induced plasma spectroscopy and machine learning algorithm to detect skin cancers. And in spectroscopy field, there are many things to do. with a combination of laser spectroscopy and machine learning algorithm. And personally, we're preparing some kind of other like spectroscopy techniques, such as surface-enhanced Raman spectroscopy, combined with AI for liquid biopsy. So it's a totally different approach from the conventional ones. And surface-enhanced Raman spectroscopy is theoretically can detect the single molecules, which is like a lot better than just conventional methods. So, yeah. So I mean, AI will hugely impact the medical device technology too. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So AI. And from you, Professor Louie, what kind of collaboration work do you think is possible with South Korea and Johns Hopkins University? Because we have a lot of money, I think, and you have a lot of techniques and good hospitals and good scientists. So I think we can make a lot of collaboration with Johns Hopkins University. And what's your thing?
I think there are so many ways. I'm just really, again, impressed with Korean bio medtech companies who are coming over for US market. So I'm going to plug in the new company I just joined. I have to. It's called D&D Pharmatech. The website is DD Pharmatech, I think. It's a good model where the technologies are actually from Korea. It's a technology that was developed in a Korean university, and it came to Hopkins to find a clinical application. So we have drug candidates and imaging markers for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. So we are actually, we did some further studies to validate those technologies to see if it has any clinical market in the US. And then all the clinical trials are actually done all over the world. So it's not just Hopkins. We also send it out to Europe and Australia. So like the previous speakers mentioned, it is a really just connected world. And I think another thing I just wanted to say is, some people think Hopkins is just like really big thing that it's hard to come into, but there's me. There are also Korean investors who are having just really building their relationship with the U.S. community. So I think there's some Korean really amazing investors who are working on those kind of vehicles where Korean entrepreneurs can go to U.S. and Korean government and other support to really launch Korean companies over there. And yeah, I think Hopkins will open their doors. That's how D&D Pharmatech worked. They were opening the doors to try different technologies to commercialize them. So it's a good model of how we have a company in the US and company in Korea.
I think we are on the end of our sessions. So do you have any final remarks? Is it?
Okay, if I may, I'd like to make comment on like for the future of the biotech in Korea and the Asia Pacific world in the world. One of the important thing I like to persuade to the stakeholders or the decision makers in government is that we need to have the different perspective on startup companies. It's not all those perspectives. Each private company, startup company, have to pursue the profit and making money. But since we have to utilize the government fund and sometimes and also the funding from VCs, and that is somehow to come from the taxpayers. So I think it is important to change the point of view of the scientists and also the research institute, saying that having the technology forward to commercialization is not just making money, but is the real application of the science. So I believe the startup and also making company is the objective of doing science. So we have to change some mind so that we can have more successful cases, so that more talented people can join, so that we can learn the sustainable ecosystem in order to have the more number of great companies in the world.
So yeah, I think while 25 minutes might seem very short time, but I think we discuss a lot about Meditec and health tech and as I think that the technology applied on medicine or health, the main purpose of the applying is that we should help people to cure or care. So the startups must never forget those the main purpose of medicines. Oh, sorry about my. Okay. So thank you for listening our panel and enjoy the next IR session, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much.